Hello, family. Welcome to African Esquire TV. I'm your host, Tunish Tari. I want to go to a story that was very upsetting, but definitely needs to be talked about and needs to be dissected out of South Africa. So first, I'm going to play this video and we're going to come back with some commentary.
Tension in KZN's Umkhanyakude district growing. The murder of a mining activist at the weekend has prompted calls from NGOs to bring her killers to justice. The 63-year-old was the deputy chairperson of the Umfolozi Community Environmental Justice Organization. She was very vocal about the proposed expansion of a local coal mine. Her family believes she was killed because of it. But the Somkele coal mine doesn't share the same opinion. Tubivalane speaks to Fikile Change's family.
A family in mourning. Fikile Changase was at her home in Opondweni outside Mtubatuba with her 13-year-old grandson when 3 armed men entered. They shot her multiple times.
She was always complaining about feeling unsafe and getting threats on the phone, being called that she is going to die for what she's doing. So it happened.
This is the country's largest anthracite mine, producing more than 550,000 tons of this type of hard coal a year. But it's running out of space to mine, and in order to expand, some families will have to be relocated.
The Fikile Changase decided to say, I will never sell my people. I will stand by my people, because the mandate was not to sell the land, it was not to take money, but to stand against the mine. And she didn't sign that MOU.
So I'm reading from an article on The Guardian that says South African environmental activist was shot dead in her home. Fikile Nchigase, 65, was involved in a legal dispute over the extension of an open cast mine operated by a company that's named Tendele Coal near Somkele, close to, oh, I'm going to skip this part out of respect for my people, but it's close to a reserve inside of Africa. So local police told The Guardian that 4 men entered Nchigase's home and at about 6:30 p.m. on Thursday, and they shot her dead. 65-year-old woman. That's old enough to be your grandma, auntie, great auntie, whatever. Shot dead by 3 men in her home. A 13-year-old child witnessed the murder, okay, in front of a 13-year-old child. Tendele Coal condemned, this is the company that she was suing, condemned what it called a senseless killing and called for calm in a joint statement. Now, okay, why are you calling for calm? The coal mine has been the focus of a protracted legal dispute between a company, conservationists, and some locals who are in favor of extending it for economic reasons. Now, Nchasike's lawyer said that her client was a courageous activist against the expansion of the mine. Nchigase was a prominent member of the Umfolozi Community Environmental Justice Organization. She was incredibly outspoken about the truth and justice, having no qualms about people calling out who she felt about calling people out who she felt with being devious or untruthful. She did not compromise her ethics ever. So this is obviously a very horrible story. Now let's put some emphasis on the details of this story, because it's a coal mine that is essentially trying to expand, and her trying to expand her community. And she became an activist and one of the people who was going to sue the coal mine for what they were doing, because it has detrimental effects, not just on the animals, but on the human livelihood. How many times do we see this in African communities, that you have these companies that obtain ownership of mines or whatever, and they feel like it's okay to just do things that are going to pollute your environment. And the fact that you die early from it, the fact that you have that you might develop cancer, the fact that these chemicals might be affecting you as far as your breathing, has no bearing on them, because they do not value you. And frankly, it doesn't affect them. They live out somewhere it's very safe. They don't have to live with the consequences of their actions. And frankly, these people are political people, and capitalism understand that the biggest cop out from the government is that they collaborate with these companies, because they think that they are going to prop them up as a governmental governmental people, but these people are very well connected politically, and that's what allows them to keep doing things that affect the citizens, the people who supposedly elect the government. And the government feels fine not protecting them because what are the consequences? More likely than not, the people will not rally against the government. They'll see it as this company and not as the ones who are supposed to protect them. Now, I looked into the company a little more, and I just want to kind of expose a few more things about this story. Now, this is an article entitled "Mine Dispute Will Not Affect Pig Iron Plant." Now, this is a backstory. This actually happened last year, February 17, 2019. As always, I'll have all the description in the description, all the articles if you want to read through it yourself. But this is a backstory about the company that actually owns this mine in South Africa. So the company proposing a nearly $500 million pig iron project for the harbor has been subject of controversy over its coal mines in South Africa. But the issue should not affect the upcoming project. Okay. So Patman, that's the name of the company, the South African company, is looking to build a plant at Kinder Morgan Penny Dock facility that could lead to several hundred construction jobs as well as 100 permanent skilled jobs once completed. The company received in Ohio, this is in the United States, Ohio, EPA air permit for the project, but still has to obtain water pollution control permits to start the construction. Now, Petman de-enlisted from the Johannesburg Stock Exchange in 2017. That resulted in some foreign protests. And I'm going to protests over the company have been based both on its decision to de-enlist as well as its desire to mine anthracite, a hard common form of coal on the border of the park that I did not want to butcher, which is essential to the survival of the white rhino. According to The Guardian, it's an Otis Nature Reserve. It has rhinos, antelope, big cats graze there, and obviously there's tourists that come by. Now, activists in Somkele went to court and shut the mine, or at least stop any expansion, the article says. This is the same activist, one of whom was the woman who was recently murdered. Patman officials said its operations were fully compliant with all legal requirements, and they accused those people who live in the place where their company operates of being activists who hate mining, The Guardian states. Bradley Doing, the president and CEO of Patman, said that the proposed Ashtubula plant won't use anthracite or any other type of coal in its production process. The process uses natural gas, he said. Now, a few things I want to pull from this article. One is the people who own the coal mine, again, is this company called Patman. And they obviously have an extension in the United States. In fact, they have, I believe it's called Patman USA. So I don't know if it's the same company or if it's a subsidiary of the company under Patman. Now, something else interesting about these people, Patman, and this is what I really want to focus this video on. And I found this on an article on Bloomberg. They obtained their, the company originated in 1972. Okay. They began mines and processing minerals in South Africa. They explored different projects for iron and, Canada, Liberia. But they were founded in 1972. Okay, in South Africa. Why do I want to emphasize this? Because this essentially means, which is not surprising, that this is a coal mine that has been owned since before apartheid, right? Now, why is that concerning? When we talk about decolonization, we're always given scenarios where the government was decolonized. For example, you might have a change in power. It's no longer the British crown or the French crown, but you have these governments that are given this idea of being autocratic and having their own self-determination, right? But if you think about it, if you're not going to decolonize the economies and the ownership and the wealth in the country, then you're really not decolonizing anything. The whole point of colonization was the acquisition of wealth. So how can you decolonize if you're not going to decolonize the wealth disparities, if you're not going to decolonize the ownership disparities, if you're not going to decolonize the economy and the setup of the economy, those who own and those who do not have? Not doing so is going to give you the situation that we see continually where there are mines that have been owned prior to colonization. But the rightful thing to say is, if you did not acquire these things legally, how are you still able to operate them? And no one says anything. The government, they're fine with it. The people, they're starving. But hey, you've had these things since colonization, since you took it forcibly from our people illegally, and we're fine with that. That should be something that's very concerning, and that should be something that is a red light. Essentially, I'm saying we need to stop what we're doing when we talk about things like even Pan-Africanism and integrating Africa, all these things. We really need to pause and figure out, what does that mean for the best interest of the people? Because if you're allowing for criminal companies who would kill a 65-year-old woman, and you might say, we don't have proof of that, but common sense says this woman was in the process of suing this company, and then all of a sudden 3 men armed come in and kill this woman. Clearly the company was complicit in that. If we're gonna allow them to continue to reign inside of an Africa that has free trade, inside of an Africa that doesn't have borders, inside of an Africa that has the diaspora come home all the time, but they're still able to exist with the current situation, the current power disparity, then that's really not anything close to liberation. And that's not anything close to what our forefathers of Pan-Africanism really wanted. So again, we need to put a hole in a red light and say, hey, pause. What are we talking about? We're talking about liberation. Because just saying, hey, we're all African, let's come together, that's great. It's essential and it's a very necessary part. But if we're not going to deal with this economic issue and have an economic philosophy going into this, then that's going to completely derail any efforts at African liberation. One thing that I'm noticing more and more in the Pan-Africanist language and the Pan-Africanist meetings, you'll have Pan-Africanists with Fortune 500 companies, who happen to have a Black CEO or a Black executive or something like that. And they sit on these boards and they come together and they say, yes, Pan-Africanism. Pan-Africanism, absent a derailment of capitalism that was built around depriving Africans of their human rights, cannot be Pan-Africanism. It's only going to be a surface level event that's going to display African culture and celebrate African culture, but it's not going to go to the heart and the root of what is actually causing us to be the most poor, the most politically unorganized, the most deprived, and the most targeted by not just European, but Chinese influence and takeover. So it's a very unfortunate story. And hopefully this woman gets justice. Hopefully they figure out who's really the ones who did this, because of course it's probably 3 African men who they're going to put this on, who conducted the murder. But of course, if in more all likelihood it is the case that this company was the one who put the hit out, then hopefully we really find the one who would take the life of a 65-year-old woman. So with that, I will go and end this video and say I'd love to see your comments.